Today, I'm going to speak about how you can spot other people making blunders and errors of judgment based on how they think. So how do massive companies follow crazy strategy? How does it happen and waste millions? We're going to cover Kodak, the Millennium Dome, HS2, and this 30 minutes will not only allow you to spot those car crashes before they happen, but will also help you to negotiate on price, on pay rises, on your time costs, on investing. It will help you not only when you buy things like a new car and sell things like an old car, but also to generally become better at spotting negotiation traps, particularly in other people. And above all, today, right now, you're going to learn a new way of looking at business decisions and spot other people making big mistakes. So you may have noticed this is scripted. It's there only to keep me on time, but please stay for the networking as well. I'm going to try and do this in 30 minutes. Please don't drop off. The network breakout rooms work really well, and I'll be hopping in and out to take questions. So I'm going to say to a group of highly educated professionals that 90% of everything we do is unthinking and unconscious. That runs counter to that poll, doesn't it? Where 91% of us think we're logical. So how can it be? But it is true, and I'll demonstrate it to you right now, because we spend most of our time and all of our sleeping time in what's called in NLP a trance state. And so do your clients. And that's the advantage, because today, now you're going to learn some of the basic secrets that will open that door to becoming an expert in judgmental, making judgments. So when you get into your car, do you consciously think about which way to turn the key to start the engine, which pedal to press? And if a child runs into the road, do you first have to think, I've got to brake now? No, because your subconscious or unconscious mind does it all for you. It starts at birth. So the first time a little girl cleans her teeth, just watch it. It's conscious effort. It's conscious, it's jerky, conscious movement, but then it's automatic and forever. You don't need conscious thought to clean your teeth. Just try cleaning your teeth back to front, and you'll see your unconscious mind struggles and your conscious mind needs to step in to help. Reading. You might have to consciously think about one word. The rest is done for you. You don't need conscious thought to read a book. Turn the page. It's 90% automatic. Cristiano Ronaldo has only one conscious thought to create. Target, top left or bottom right. If he had to think about the run-up and the strike and the contact, he'd miss every single time, guaranteed. So, and here's one big thing to think about. All of our emotions are unconscious, all of them. Anger is not conscious. It's technically called a focused trance state in NLP training, but terrible things are said and done unconsciously, things we would never do consciously. In fact, if we had to consciously think how to be angry, we'd probably never be angry. And it's exactly the same with habits, smoking, drinking, OCD, phobias. If these were conscious, we could give up, right? But the thoughts come from that part of the brain that is called the unconscious mind. So what is this thing that's steering us? And if we can do all these things automatically, unconsciously, what about business decisions? Surely not. Surely all business decisions are made with logic. After all, 91% of us think they are. How could it be possible that life-changing decisions might just be made unconsciously? Well, expert Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman there with Barack Obama thinks that 98% of all decisions are made unconsciously. And that's the topic of today, how the unconscious mind leads people to the wrong decision and how you can spot it coming in other people for your client's benefit, for your firm, and ultimately your own benefit. The reason we need unconscious thought is simple. Our conscious brain is too slow and it's too limited. It's too questioning. It hasn't evolved yet to the level that the brain that Mr. Spock had in Star Trek. It overloads very quickly. And pretty much of all our decisions are made unconsciously because our unconscious mind couldn't and can't cope. Conscious thought is deliberate with lots and lots of effort. It's a controlled mental process with self-awareness, logic, and it's skeptical. Unconscious thought is fast. It's unquestioning. It takes the easy route without self-awareness or control. And what it sees is what it takes. It doesn't look for more, but it works at pace. It's rapid, it's unlimited, and it makes up for 98% of all our thinking. Think of it this way. The unconscious, or sometimes called the subconscious mind, thinks like a child. It wants to please and it seeks pleasure for you. It does it for you. It does what a child would do for a parent. It's completely blind to reason. It takes one look at the facts and it acts. And here's your angle in business. It actually thinks it's clever, as you'll soon see. Understand this and you can become wealthy beyond your dreams. And if you don't, I promise you buy that house or car cheaper than you would without this knowledge today. And if you've heard of unconscious bias, this is in a nutshell where bias comes from. It's what corporate trainers make millions from. There are hundreds of them: gender bias and racial bias, all sorts of biases. But we're here today to make you money, to give you the edge, or to stop others losing money. So I'm going to take you through three common biases that you may have heard of. And if you haven't, then neither of your clients. So here we go. The first is called anchoring bias. The first price is the anchor, and the anchor is what influences the response. I'm going to show you a video that demonstrates anchoring bias and how gullibly childlike our unconscious mind is. The people in the video actually think they're making rational decisions, but they're not. Watch how subconsciously they are primed with what's called the anchor price. A quick word: in the video, they call the unconscious mind system 1 and the conscious mind system 2. Here we go. You'll enjoy this. 3 minutes.
You have two systems of thinking that steer you through life. Fast, intuitive system 1 that is incredibly powerful and does most of the driving. And slow, logical system 2 that is clever but a little lazy. Trouble is, there's a bit of a battle between them as to which one is driving your decisions. And this is where the mistakes creep in. When we use the wrong system to make a decision.
Just going to ask you a few questions. We're interested in what you think. This question concerns this nice bottle of champagne I have here. Millicent 2005, it's a good year. Genuinely nice vintage bottle.
These people think they're about to use slow, sensible system 2 to make a rational decision about how much they would pay for a bottle of champagne. But what they don't know is that their decision will actually be taken totally without their knowledge by their hidden fast autopilot system 1.
So unconsciously.
And with the help of a bag of ping
bottles here from 1 to 100 in this bag. I'd like you to reach in and draw one out at random for me, if you would.
First, they've got to choose a ball.
Number says 10.
10.
10.
10.
They think it's a random number, but in fact it's rigged. All the balls are marked with the low number 10.
This experiment is all about the thoughtless creation of habits. It's about how we make one decision and then other decisions follow it as if the first decision was actually meaningful. What we do is purposefully we give people a first decision that is clearly meaningless. 10.
10. Okay. Would you be willing to pay £10 for this nice bottle of vintage champagne?
I would, yes.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
This first decision is meaningless, based as it is on a seemingly random number. But what it does do is lodge the low number 10 in their heads.
Would you buy it for £10?
Yes, I would.
You would? Okay.
Now for the real question, where we ask them how much they'd actually pay for the champagne.
What's the maximum amount you think you'd be willing to pay?
20?
Okay.
£7.
£7. Okay.
Probably £10.
A range of fairly low offers. But what happens if we prime people with a much higher number, 65 instead of 10?
What does that one say?
65.
65. Okay.
Okay. It says 65.
How will this affect the price people are prepared to pay?
What's the maximum you would be willing to pay for this bottle of champagne?
40.
45 pounds.
45. Okay.
50. 40 quid.
Okay.
£50.
£50?
Yeah, I'd pay between 50 and 80 pounds. I guess.
Between 50 and 80?
Yeah.
Logic has gone out the window. The price people are prepared to pay is influenced by nothing more than a number written on a ping pong ball.
So there you go. Logic's gone out of the window. They called it priming. I've called it anchoring bias. Think of the power that gives you when you know how to anchor the other person to a subconscious or unconscious price or cost or value. But we see anchoring all the time in the January promotions, reduction 50% off. And so if you're going to buy that car, sorry, I admitted somebody, and
This is where the mistakes.
beg your pardon, I admitted somebody, it started the video again. So if you're going to buy that car and your budget is £5,000, walk into the dealer, or better still, before you walk into the dealer, let him know that your budget's £4,000, because as soon as you say that, that salesman can only think about that number, can only think about that number. And that's what the unconscious mind picks up on. The rest flows from that. So if you're pitching time costs, anchor a high price, if possible, before you meet. Then you can work backwards, and then people think they've got a deal and that the price is very fair. If you're buying a house, tell the agent how little you want to spend. He's going to tell the seller before you even meet. The second bias, if you enjoyed that, is confirmation bias. Remember the professor in the last video saying that this is where the unquestioning unconscious mind actually looks for information to support decision making. Imagine it as if your mind was working just like the child telling its parents what it thinks they want to hear. Brexit was a classic, and I challenge anyone with a view either way, unconsciously preferred information that supported our view was favored by those people. We all do it naturally. And in this case, it became the most divisive issue for a generation. Why? Because the actuality was that there was a tsunami of information from the media supporting both views. So we tended to read what we liked. And in politics, there's always a surplus of views either way. People don't subscribe to news feeds that they don't like, right? They subscribe to what they prefer. So we automatically do this all the time. We read the news that supports our views. It's confirmation that we are right, but it's unconscious. Nobody would admit to buying a paper or a newspaper because it confirms our views. We would say things like, well, it's well informed, or it's unbiased, or even balanced. The Brexit politicians fell for it big time. It paralyzed government in 2019. And the more polarized we became, the stronger the unconscious mind hungered for supporting information. In business, it's really destructive, and huge names have fallen to it. It's a value destroyer because it ignores the total universe of facts. So the press focuses on very small factual information. Companies focus on very small facts to support their decision making, but the entire universe is unlimited. So we focus on selective facts, not all the facts, and our minds are doing it all the time. Otherwise we'd explode. And what that does, and what you'll see, is that it delays decision making. And you restructurers out there know that delaying decisions when you're losing money kills businesses, right? Destroys value. And confirmation bias kills businesses. It almost killed Britain politically. It's killing businesses that some of you work in right now, and clients. And slow and painfully, because competition chips away whilst the board embraces news and evidence that they want to hear. Kodak invented the first digital camera in 1975, and they buried it because it didn't use film. And Sony produced their first one in 1981. Motorola denied 3G. Xerox copiers did innovate. They're vastly innovative, but they gave the Apple Mac to Steve Jobs because it didn't copy. IBM completely ignored the market for PCs that they would have had a complete monopoly over because they did mainframes. Nokia was the biggest phone producer on the planet, but spectacularly refused to replace its operating system, it's called Symbian, to compete against emerging smartphones that did more things. All of these boards put up unconscious barricades against a flood of information to the contrary, and followed the advice that they wanted to hear. And that's the clue. If your clients want to hear it, if your clients are saying and you can see that they want to hear it, it's unconscious bias at work. But you'll see it also in small businesses, and importantly, startups. You've met these amazing people who will only hear and see what they want to hear and see, slaves to what they want to hear. So just think what examples of confirmation bias you could think of right now, who you know who uses convenient information to confirm their beliefs in business, in home, in your friendship groups, maybe. So the final value destroyer for today is called loss aversion bias. And think of the unconscious mind as a child, and what is the last thing that any child wants? The pain of loss. It's mentally crippling for a child, for that thinking style. So this is particularly relevant for investors, lenders, private equity, project managers, and anyone who has spent money and dwelt on the loss so much that they've put more money in, or clung on in the hope, and sadly often misery, that things will get better. The pain of losing is roughly twice the pleasure of gaining. And so if you are given £500, it gives you a good feeling. But if you lose £500, the feeling of loss is twice as bad as the pleasure of gaining. And that pain is something that your unconscious brain wants to avoid. And that's where we hang on and often miss the deal on the up and fail to stop a loss on the down. We hang on in there. So if you're one of these people, don't buy Bitcoin if you can't bear to sell on the downside. There's a whole city, Vegas, dedicated to making money from people who follow their gambling losses, loss aversion bias, because they can't bear the pain of walking away with a loss. They even call it an addiction. It's much more simple than that because I treat clients for it. And it is simple loss aversion that can be rectified quicker than one might think. The aversion to loss even keeps some people in miserable relationships, as the pain of loss, just the pain of losing, can outweigh the unpleasantness of carrying on. And we all know these friends, right? And in stock crashes, you'll be well aware that most private investors freeze. They hold on and don't sell. I'm a massive culprit. Corporations have worked this out, and they have programs in programs that create stop loss. And you see it really often in projects. It cripples boards of directors of investor funds, of companies themselves, who instead of viewing an investment as a sunk cost at the time of the investment, dead money, follow their loss with new money because the fear of realizing the loss. So they pile more money in, and more and more. So can you think of any companies that or projects that have suffered from loss aversion bias? I used to see this in restructuring, where the directors became just so wedded to their projects that they just couldn't let them go. But you see it all the time again with small business owners who mortgage up to the hilt to give their passion another chance, all because the pain associated with accepting a loss is too great. And for our last but one slide, here are some real examples where loss-making projects became crusades. Apart from the Channel Tunnel, probably the biggest example I could find was that the Parliament of Scotland, Holyrood, which was best case 10 million and worst case 40 million. And it came in at 440 million, 400 million over budget. This was conceived in pre-devolution Scotland, 1997, and it became an ultimate crusade that they couldn't let go of. Second, the Millennium Dome, where, if you're old enough to remember, where every sensible person in the land was screaming at government to commercialize it before it opened. But they opened it as an exhibition center, and only half the projected numbers of visitors bothered to go there. It was a sterile wasteland. It's now called the O2, but on the 1st of January 2000, it opened and closed exactly 1 year later, having overspent by 69 million on ludicrously inflated visitor numbers that never materialized. Maybe told them so. And here's a live example. Here's a real live example. I make absolutely no judgment, but here are the facts. Original budget 56 million, current budget 56 billion, current budget 98 billion. And we all know where that's going. It's a post-COVID white elephant, but you might notice that the thought of dropping it is the biggest driver of the project. Now, there'll be many arguments either way. All I'm saying, the thought of dropping it could actually be the biggest driver when you listen to the politicians of that project. Throw in some confirmation bias of some selective benefits for the north of England, and you have confirmation bias and loss aversion bias hand in hand working as one. So the purpose of today was just to get you thinking about the decisions, even at the top level, but also in our daily lives, are driven not by pure conscious logic, but by something entirely more complicated, which is there to keep us sane not necessarily correct. And we probably don't think about this daily. So hopefully this will create some triggers in your mind so that when you buy that house or pitch those fees or assess that project or advise that client, you can just think twice about what might be going on beneath the surface. And if you are interested in me, my first session is always free. And for this group, I charge half price. But I'd encourage anybody to have a mentor. Just please ensure that they're qualified and have lots of testimonials. And because mentoring is life-changing, and because it takes us to places, hopefully like today for you, that we rarely have time to think about. Thank you, Anna.